No sign of Liverpool letting up as they thrash West Ham United. Spurs dropped more points, at least to brighten up my Sunday. The transfer rumours continue as the Gunners are linked to both a French and an Italian international. We'll get into all of that and we'll discuss a former Premier League player that plenty of Arsenal fans, it seems, would love to see join our club. All that and more on today's episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Hey, everybody, how are you? Hope you're all good. Hope you're all having a wonderful Monday so far. Welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast, with me, your host, Harry Symeou. Guys, the man cave's getting closer. The man cave is getting closer. The new home of the Chronicles of a Gooner is nearly ready for use. Can't wait. Can't wait to get out of this corner in the bedroom. And it's such chaos, this bedroom, right? Because as I mentioned previously, we moved in recently and we sort of prioritized doing all the other bits and pieces. Our bedroom was left till last, and we just got boxes and junk everywhere, basically, until we can get it sorted. So that's why I sit in front of the door in this bedroom, because it's the only part of the room that looks semi-presentable as much as it doesn't, which is incredible. But anyway, good morning to you all. Thank you for tuning in. As always, really, really do appreciate it. Before we get into today's content, just want to say a massive congratulations to our good friend, Tom Canton over at the Gooner Talk, who has become Arsenal's chief writer for football.london. That's a massive thing. It's a massive gig. And as I tweeted yesterday, I know Tom. Tom's a very good friend of mine, and therefore I know exactly how hard he has, A, worked to get there, and B, will work to make sure that he does the best he possibly can in the role. So big congratulations to him. Being in a similar industry, I don't exactly do the same things. I'm not a writer, but being in a similar industry, I understand exactly how difficult it is to establish yourself and to get to the kind of position that you want to be in. So congratulations to him, and wish him all the best. Okay, let's talk first of all about some of yesterday's Premier League action. Liverpool cruised past West Ham United with a 5-0 win at the London Stadium. I just want to throw this question out there. To you guys, and I'd love to hear what you guys have to say on this. How are West Ham United better off under Julian Lopetegui than they were under David Moyes? I just don't see it. They're equally as boring, in my opinion. And style of play was the big thing that, David Moyes was sort of criticized for. It was what's happened to the West Ham way. That's what we used to hear, attacking, free-flowing football. David Moyes got results, man. And did he have some bad seasons? Yeah. But he had some exceptional seasons as well, where West Ham's league finishes were very, very good, very positive. But also, he delivered European silverware to a club that have been, quite frankly, starved of silverware for a very, very long time. So I always felt that David Moyes' criticism was harsh. I always felt that the vitriol that came his way was over the top. And then when they moved on from David Moyes, I thought, okay, what are you going to do now? Are you going to bring in a manager that kind of reflects the West Ham way? Are you going to bring in an exciting young coach and give him the tools and the time to build a side? No, they didn't. They went and got Julian Lopetegui, who is very, very similar to David Moyes in a lot of ways, in that pragmatism is at the pinnacle of everything that he does. And that's kind of my thing with this West Ham appointment. And I sound like I'm being bitter towards West Ham because I'm frustrated at how uncompetitive they were, in the game against Liverpool yesterday. But it was just like history repeating itself. It was like the game that we played against them, where in the first half, they were just so easy to get at. Like some of the goals that Liverpool scored yesterday. Like, don't take anything away from Liverpool. I'm not trying to do that, right? I'm not trying to, rubbish their achievement, because it is a big achievement to go away to West Ham and win the way that they did and continue to put points on the board when everybody's kind of looking at them from week to week now, because they're the ones leading the way. Everybody's looking at them to see if they've got the mettle. Everybody's looking at them to see if and when they're going to slip up and how. And they went there and they just completely blew West Ham out the park. And listen, West Ham had a few moments in the first half. I thought Mohamed Kudus was probably the brightest spark in claret and blue. And I know there's a lot of you in the chat box and a lot of you that listen to this on a regular basis that would quite like to see Arsenal move for Mohamed Kudus. We've had that conversation and that discussion in the past. Obviously, he ended up joining West Ham United. Yesterday, there were some bright sparks from him. But just on West Ham, very, very quickly, I just don't see how they're better off under Julian Lopetegui. And they spent a lot of money in the summer. They bought a lot of players in the summer. And yeah, okay, that can come with its challenges. And sometimes it takes time for those players to find their feet and all the rest of it. But I just don't see how they're better off. Elsewhere, though, Spurs were held to a draw at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium by a newly confident and inspired Wolves side under Vitor Pereira. I got to say, the way Wolves started that game, I was really, really impressed. Really impressed, man. Confident, knocking the ball around, always on the front foot, trying to make something happen. People often talk about Spurs being the ones that take risks in the way that they play, and that overconfidence or that insistence on playing that way often lands them in hot water, etc., etc. Wolves were just as bold, just as brave, I thought, in their approach, and deserved to get something from the game. Obviously, there were boos again at full time at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, as you'd expect. And Ange Postecoglou is under real pressure. And why wouldn't he be? Their league position is completely unacceptable. I think injuries are an issue, obviously. And if I sit here and say that Arsenal are suffering from injuries and that injuries have caused us to be a little bit further off the pace than we'd have liked at this stage, then I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't at least make that point when discussing Spurs. But my God, they're getting so many of the basics wrong. They're just so soft-centered and easy to get at. And I just think, like, regardless of the players that you have at your disposal, you've got to be able to set up a team in a more solid way, I guess, is the term. I was trying to think of a complicated, smart word, but solid will do. So yeah, I think that's why so many Spurs fans are up in arms about Ange Postecoglou, and why I'm not sure he's got that long left if things continue going in the direction that they are. Just very quickly looking at sort of how the Premier League land lays at the moment. We're one game away from the halfway stage, etc., etc. And I read something yesterday that I found really, really interesting. For all the talk about Arsenal being rubbish this season, for all the talk about Arsenal being nowhere near the level that we've come to expect, for all the talk about Arsenal being way off the pace, actually, if we win at Brentford on New Year's Day, so when we get to the halfway point of the season, we will only be 1 point worse off than where we were at the same stage last season. And we've had much harder fixtures. So does that kind of put into context that, yes, okay, we've not been as good as we'd like. Yes, okay, we all thought that after the really strong run at the end of last season, we were going to put our foot on the gas and really accelerate away and make this Premier League title our own. Yeah, we all thought that, and we all hoped that that would happen. It hasn't happened that way. But it just puts into context that, we were very, very close to winning the Premier League last season. And I remember all of the same conversations about a lack of creativity, about not having enough within the squad. All of that stuff was being talked about this time last year. And then we went on an incredible run and we almost won the Premier League title. Now, almost isn't enough. Obviously, you want to succeed. You want to get over the line. I get all of that. But the point I'm trying to make is that if we finish the first half of the season just 1 point worse off than where we were, when you consider the games we've had, the injuries that we've had, and all the other issues, then is it that bad? Like, is it as bad as people are making it out to be? It probably isn't. And that's kind of the reality of the situation. And I know it's very easy to be knee-jerk and to be angry and to be frustrated. And I find myself feeling all of those things and reacting in that way to certain performances and certain results. You'd have heard me on multiple post-match podcasts this season saying, we don't have this and we don't have that, and we're not good enough in that department and we're not good enough in that department. But when you zoom out, things look quite different a lot of the time, don't they? You can get caught up in the kind of the drama and the sort of outrage that is spiraling around on social media every time Arsenal drop points. And sometimes you need to just zoom out and look at the wider picture. And the bigger picture tells me that we're not where we want to be, and we've not been as good as we perhaps should have been, but it's not all over. It's not doom and gloom. So yeah, anyway, that's my sort of what's the word? Inspirational speech of the day. Anyway, let's talk about some transfer links, because I know that's what you're all here for. Yes, it is transfer silly season. The January window is just a couple of days away from opening, and that means there's going to be lots of rumors, lots of stories flying around, and there's going to be lots of pressure from us, the fans, on the football club to go out and do the business that we think would give us that little boost that we need. Let's start off with a link to a Serie A-based Italian international, and that is Lorenzo Pellegrini. Reports out of Italy say that Arsenal hold an interest in Lorenzo Pellegrini. Look, I'm not convinced by the validity of this report, but I thought I owed it to you guys to at least discuss it because it is going around. But B, I'm not convinced about his suitability to Arsenal anyway. He's not had a very good season so far. He's not been that impactful. To be fair, neither have Roma. You know, they're mid-table in Serie A. They've had a lot of problems, a lot of struggles. They've had to change manager midway through the campaign. And Claudio Ranieri is now at the helm there. And when you go back to Claudio Ranieri, it means that, you know, and with all due respect to Claudio Ranieri, I think he's a great coach and has been a great coach. But when you circle back to Claudio Ranieri, it means that you're kind of circling the drain a little bit and you're struggling. And I'm not talking about in terms of relegation, but you're in a place where clearly things aren't going well and you feel like you need a bit of a reset. So you go and get Claudio Ranieri because culturally he will lift the place and he will get people believing in him. He'll get people, you know, on side, and that in itself can be enough to just create enough of an upturn to get you back on the right path. Look, Lorenzo Pellegrini for me is a player that does his best work in a kind of central attacking midfield area, and I just don't think that that's what we're in the market for. I think we could do with a striker or a winger, so a forward, someone to play in our front three. That's first and foremost what we want. I've said before, I'm not particularly fussed if it's a striker who prefers to play centrally or if it's a winger who can contribute goals. I just think you need to look at what the best option is. And so if there's the best available right winger, I would take that over a mediocre middle of the road striker. You know, that's how I look at it. I think it's about finding the best player because we know that Mikel Arteta likes to move his pieces around. We know that he likes versatility. And so if we're working on that basis, then bringing in someone who can contribute goals from a wide area isn't going to be something that Mikel Arteta is afraid of doing. You know, all the talk is around a centre forward and a striker, but he wouldn't be afraid to go and bring in a player that can contribute what we're looking for, but maybe from a slightly different part of the pitch, etc., etc. So I think that forward is the name of the game going into the January window, and I just don't think that Lorenzo Pellegrini makes any sense whatsoever because his performances haven't been great. He hasn't even been in the team much for Roma this season. And people will argue that that's due to the system that they've been playing, etc., etc. There was a time where Lorenzo Pellegrini was a key component and was a massive part of the Roma side. I don't know that that's going to be the case for much longer. I don't know that I would go and spend any money on him. I don't think it would cost a fortune, by the way, because if he is out of favor and he is at this stage in his career, it's probably not something that we would have to break the bank to do. But yeah, I just don't see any viability in this one. So my rating of this transfer rumor is very, very low, and I wouldn't pay too much credence to it. I felt it was worth discussing because it is going around. It is worth talking about. It is worth touching on. But can I see it happening? No, I can't. Not at all. Just before we continue through today's episode, I just want to remind you that the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast is partnered with NordVPN, the best VPN service out there. It's a service that I personally can't do without anymore, whether you're looking to stream the festive football or your favorite movies. NordVPN is the one for you. It's a game changer. You can sign up via the link in the description. Visit nordvpn.com/ChroniclesAFC for a mega discount and 4 months free at the end of your plan. Not only does it give me extra protection when surfing the web, downloading or streaming, but I now have the ability to access geo-block content by changing my location virtually with the click of a button. Sign up now via nordvpn.com/ChroniclesAFC and take advantage of this amazing offer. Plus, with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, it's totally risk-free. You won't regret it. nordvpn.com/ChroniclesAFC. Okay, another one that's been linked with a move to Arsenal and has been linked with a move to Arsenal in the past is Kingsley Coman. Now, he was linked with Arsenal during the summer. And what I did this morning was I went back to the episode where we discussed that link in order to gauge what I was feeling then. I thought I knew, but I wanted to just double check, and because, you know, a lot happens and a lot changes and opinions and views can change. But I wanted to go back and have a little bit of a reminder of what I was saying at the time that Kingsley Coman was linked to Arsenal during the summer. And look, I'm basically on exactly the same page as I was 4 months ago when we released that episode. And that is, been a great player, been a really, really top talent, played at some mega football clubs, understands entirely what it means to play for a big football club and how the pressure can impact you, knows how to deal with it, knows how to come through it. French international, etc., etc. Been there, done it, got trophies, got experience, all the rest of it. Not the youngest anymore, Kingsley Coman, and that would kind of put me off of spending mega money on him. But we know that his situation at Bayern Munich has been up in the air for quite some time. And you kind of looked at it and you went, well, if there's an opportunity there to do a deal that works for all parties, maybe you take the risk. Maybe you take the gamble. The reason I think Arsenal opted for someone like Raheem Sterling was because he, of course, had that experience and had that track record in this division in the Premier League. But also it was a deal that represented very little risk to Arsenal Football Club. Okay, we barely paid anything to get him in on loan. You know, the fact is that Chelsea are paying a large proportion of his wages, even though he's representing Arsenal at the moment. And so I think maybe they looked at Coman. I don't know this for a fact. I'm just kind of speculating here. But maybe they looked at Kingsley Coman and went, for what it's going to take to get him, for the wages that we're going to have to pay, and given that Bayern are not as desperate as Chelsea were in that situation, we're probably not going to get a deal that makes sense. And he's got 4 goals and 2 assists in 19 appearances across all competitions this season. It's not disastrous, but, you know, it's not exactly a stat that jumps out at you that makes you go, oh, well, let's do it. This is a no-brainer, in the way that the stats do with another player that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes' time. So with Kingsley Coman, I'm still of the same mindset. Good footballer, been at a big club, very experienced, been at multiple big clubs, by the way, knows how to handle this type of environment. But injuries have been a problem as well. And if we're going to have to go and drop a bit of money on a player that would no way be a long-term signing, and then we're going to have to deal with his injury situation as well, then that could come back to be a really, really bad bit of business. Raheem Sterling's injured at the moment, but we've paid pretty much nothing to get him. And so if it works, it will be hailed as genius business. If it fails, people will say, why didn't you get someone else? Of course. But from the club's perspective, financially, there wasn't a massive outlay and there wasn't that much risk taken. So that's kind of where we are on that. Kingsley Coman, for me, if you're going to send him on loan and cover half his wages, then I'll take him. But if you're going to ask us to pay a fee, if you're going to ask us to take on a massive burden on our wage bill, then again, it's another one for me that I'm sorry is a no. That's just how I see this. And finally, a player that I want to talk about on today's episode is Ademola Lookman. And the reason I bring up Ademola Lookman is because I think this is a guy who, if you sort of took a survey of 100 Arsenal fans and said, who would you like to see Arsenal go out and sign in January? Who do you think would be a good option in the wide areas? Of the 100, I reckon 20 at least come back and say Ademola Lookman, because his reputation has grown massively. Now, I remember Ademola Lookman when he was coming through in England. I remember him when he first kind of broke onto the scene, Charlton Athletic. Then, of course, he moved to Everton for a decent fee. I think it was around about £7.5 million at the time. It didn't really work for Ademola Lookman at Everton. He then went to RB Leipzig on loan, came back to Everton, and then RB Leipzig signed him on a permanent deal. He then spent some time at Fulham, spent some time at Leicester, and eventually he left RB Leipzig on a permanent deal in August 2022, and he joined Atalanta. Now, Atalanta are a club where they seem to be able to find the misfits, if you want to call them that, of European football, and start to get a tune out of them. Gianpiero Gasperini is one of the best in the business at doing this. Looking at a player, recognizing his potential, perhaps identifying the reasons why in his eyes that player is not achieving what they should be achieving, going and snapping them up, and then extracting that absolute maximum out of them. And that's what he's done again with Ademola Lookman. He's always been talented. There's no question about that. I think you could see that from the days that he came through at Charlton. Always been talented. But something was missing. There was a killer instinct missing. There was an edge missing. And all of a sudden, I look at Ademola Lookman and I think, my God, he's got that. And I know that he sort of propped up onto everybody's radar again after sort of leaving the Premier League, after that Europa League final where he scored a hat-trick. It will be known as the Ademola Lookman final. But he's gone on to follow up that form with a really good start to this season. 15 appearances in the Serie A for Atalanta, who are going really well, by the way. 9 goals, 5 assists, 14 direct goal contributions in 15 games. In the Champions League this year, he's got 3 goals and an assist in 5 appearances. The guy is flying at the minute. He is flying at the moment. And look, he's 27 years old, and he kind of falls into the Mikel Merino category a little bit. If that makes sense, just bear with me and I'll explain what I mean. In that, is his age profile ideal? No, it's not. Has he been in the Premier League before? Yes, but maybe not been as successful as he could have been, or maybe should have been. And some people will look at that and say, well, he's been here and he understands it. And that means that if he comes back, he'll know exactly what he's facing, and that should help his adaptation. Others will say, well, if he's done it in the Premier League before and it didn't really work, then is he cut out for this league? And I understand both sides of that argument, right? But this guy is in just irresistible form at the moment. 27 is not so old that you would, turn your nose up at him completely. But the other thing that I think people will probably be wondering is, how likely is it that Atalanta would sell him? Now, according to Transfermarkt, and I know you should never look at these things or take them as gospel, he's worth about 55 million euros, which is about 50 million pounds. Okay. I honestly think that if you put that kind of offer on the table, Atalanta would consider. Now, I know what the pushback's going to be. They are top of Serie A. He's in a Scudetto race, etc., etc. He is, of course. Do I think Atalanta are going to win the Scudetto? No, I don't. I think Arsenal are more likely to win the Premier League than Atalanta are to win the Scudetto, because I think Inter are better than them, and I think Napoli are better than them, and I think over the course of the season that's going to show, right? But Atalanta are still a club in the kind of mode of, when a big offer comes, we probably have to consider it, and we probably have to take it. That's the mode that Atalanta operate in as a football club. Now, is that mindset going to change? It might if they go on and win the Scudetto. But right now, I still think that you could tempt Atalanta into selling Ademola Lookman. It's my opinion. I don't know it for fact. But if you don't ask the question, if you don't try, if you don't check, you're never going to know, are you? So I think Arsenal should, at the very, very least, consider and explore the possibility of bringing Ademola Lookman into the football club. I think if you're talking about wide options and players that can come in and contribute goals and assists, I don't think there are many in better form right now across the continent. Ademola Lookman is right up there. So let's have a look at him. I'm not saying that we get the deal done. I'm not saying that Atalanta definitely sell. But Atalanta are not such a big club. And Serie A is a league where most of the clubs, if you put 40, 50 million pounds on the table, they have to consider it. They have to, because the financial gulf between the Serie A and the Premier League, for instance, in terms of the clubs, and especially with a club like Atalanta, this isn't a Juve or an Inter. This is a club that are punching well above their weight. You put that kind of money on the table, they have to consider it. They have to at least consider it. And if you turn Ademola Lookman's head, that's half the job. And I do think you can turn Ademola Lookman's head. I still think the lure of playing for Arsenal and the lure of playing for one of the Premier League big boys supersedes that of playing for Atalanta in the Serie A. Now, I respect Atalanta. I watch Serie A probably more than most people that will listen to this. I have immense respect for the competition, its history, what it means. I love it. If it wasn't for the Arsenal, I'd watch more Serie A than I watch Premier League, because the Premier League for me is, as good as it is and as entertaining as it is, there's a lot of things about it that I don't particularly like or appreciate. And so, yeah, I think that this is a deal that we could possibly get done. We'll never know if we never explore it. So I'm not saying that, it's definitely going to happen. We should definitely go at it. I'm just saying that, you got to ask the question. You got to try. And if we were to get in Ademola Lookman, I think most people would be pretty satisfied with that. Jid says, you're wrong, Harry. Atalanta would not sell a player in January knowing they're in a title race just because you think deep inside they believe they can't win the Scudetto, so they aren't interested in taking a proper go at it. Even Girona last season were turning away transfers in Jan. So there's a couple of differences. First of all, I'm not saying that Atalanta don't believe they're in a race. I'm saying that the bigwigs at Atalanta, if an offer like that came in, would have to sit down and consider it, because the football club financially is not on a footing to be able to say no and not even consider. Now, are they in a better state financially than they were 10 years ago? Yes, because they've had success in Europe and they've been in European competition regularly. But there's still a big, big, big gulf in financial levels, and that will play a part. And you say Girona last season were turning away transfers in January, and yeah, fine. Girona are part of a much wider ownership group that has a lot more financial muscle behind it. And that's why Girona could do what they did. You know, Girona are part of the City Football Group. They're part of a really, really rich group that owns a number of clubs. So yeah, it's a different situation entirely. Leonid says, a few months ago, I mentioned Lookman to you on one of your shows. You were not impressed by the player coming to Arsenal. What's changed? You're right. I wasn't totally convinced by this option a year ago, 6 months ago, even. I think because I've seen him follow up what he did in the Europa League with a really good first half of the Serie A season, I'm now more convinced that it wasn't just a purple patch and that he is someone who's really improved and got to a good level. Also, Paul James makes a good point. He says, Lookman has only 18 months left on his current contract. I think there might be an option for an additional year based on the research I did this morning. But at 27 years old, Paul says now's the optimum time for Atalanta to cash in. And Atalanta will cash in on players because that is their model. They're not going to keep hold of someone and risk getting 10 million for them or nothing in 2 years' time, because that's not the way that Atalanta and most of the clubs across the Serie A operate. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that. Try it. Ask the question. See where you can get. Okay, I am going to leave it there. Sorry, it's a slightly briefer episode today. I've got the builders in. I've got a couple of other bits I'm trying to deal with. I'm trying to pack down the original home of the Chronicles of Aguna so that I can move the stuff into the new one, which will hopefully be finished very, very soon. So I've got a lot on my plate at the minute. And of course, working tomorrow, working New Year's Day. So want to make the most of the day in that sense. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Leave me your thoughts in the comments. Leave a like on the video if you haven't done so already. With how many of you are watching us, there's no reason why we shouldn't have at least 250 likes on the board. So please like, subscribe. If you're listening on audio, leave us a review. And I'll see you all on the next episode. Until then, take care of yourselves and have a great Monday. Goodbye.